Hello everyone. This presentation deals with module 3 and the contents are the solidification process, its variables, need for directional solidification, degasification, sources of gases and methods of degasification. This is the part 1 of module 3 MCW. Solidification. Solidification is the process by which substance undergoes phase transformation from liquid state to solid state. Solidification may be defined in simple terms as the conversion of liquid metal at a higher temperature to the solid metal at a lower temperature. Solidification involves the agglomeration of atoms and their growth. In general, it is a process of nucleation and growth process in the conversion of liquid to solid. Coming to the theory of solidification, when a liquid cools below its freezing point or melting point, it starts to solidify and the atoms of the liquid metal begins to bond together, forming a very small sized crystal called nuclei, as you can see in the figure. This process takes place at several locations as shown. The formation of new crystals is known as nucleation and the point where it occurs is the nucleation point. As the solidification progresses, the crystal increases in size by the progressive addition of atoms and grow until they impinge upon adjacent growing crystal. Crystal growth continues in 3 dimensions, forming a tree-like appearance known as dendrites. As you can see in the figure B, the dendrites grow in different directions in each crystal, and finally, when one dendrite impinges on the adjacent growing dendrite, a grain boundary is formed as shown in the figure C. The crystal growth ceases when all the available liquid metal has solidified. Solidification variable. The solidification process by which a liquid metal freezes in a mold plays a crucial role because different solidification conditions give rise to the different microstructures and hence the properties of the casted alloy. The various factors affecting the solidification behavior of the casting include the type or the composition of the casting alloy, the thermal properties of both the alloy and the molding material, the mold thickness and the shape, chills, gating and other casting design factors, and the pouring temperature. Let's discuss one by one. Coming to the type or the composition of the casting alloy. An alloy consists of a base metal to which other element is added to obtain favorable properties. When an element is added to the base metal, it significantly alters the solidification process. This is because an alloy freezes over a range of temperatures. Thus, proper control of alloying elements promote constitutional supercooling, and further the additional use of inoculating agents promote heterogeneous nucleation, resulting in fine grained structure of the cast metal. Next, coming to the thermal properties of both alloy and the molding material. The heat released during solidification is very large, and as such it must be extracted quickly. The higher the melting point and thermal conductivity of the materials used in the casting process, the larger is the latent heat of fusion. During solidification of the metal or alloy, the following variables influence the solidification process, such as the solidification time, solidification rate, temperature gradient, cooling rate, etc. The figure shows you the cooling curve, or we can call it as the solidification curve. Let's discuss the thermal variables. Talking about the thermal variables, let's discuss about the solidification time first. Solidification time is the time taken by the molten metal for its transformation to solid state. Smaller the solidification time, lower will be the mushy zone. Better will be the properties. Mushy zone is nothing but the liquidous zone, that is the mixture of solid and liquid. It's neither solid nor liquid. The lower the mushy zone will help in reducing the shrinkage, and generally sand molds show higher solidification time as compared to metal mold. It is expressed in terms of seconds. Solidification time has a pronounced effect on the casting properties, and there exists a relationship between solidification time, ultimate tensile strength, and yield strength, as you can see in the figure 1. As and when the solidification time increases, the ultimate strength and the yield strength decreases. Next, moving on to the solidification rate, denoted as R. It indicates the rate at which solidification is progressing from one point to the other. It is denoted by R. It's nothing but delta x by delta t. Smaller the solidification time, larger the solidification rate, and faster the solidification process, and vice versa. Solidification rate is expressed as centimeters per second. Higher the value of R, better is the properties of the casting. Next is the temperature gradient. At any time interval, there will be a temperature difference between the 2 points, which can be represented as shown in the figure 3. At any time interval, dt be the temperature difference between points 1 and 2. Higher the value of G, better will be the casting soundness, and higher will be the properties. Temperature gradient is expressed as degree centigrade per centimeter. All these factors influence the structure and properties of casting. And coming to the cooling rate, it represents the rate at which the liquid metal is converted to solid metal, and it represents how fast or how slow the liquid metal is cooling in the mold. It is normally represented with the units centimeters per second. Smaller the solidification time, larger the cooling rate, and vice versa. Higher cooling rate yields better properties in the casting. The other solidification variables are the mold thickness and shape. The thickness of the mold influences the solidification time or the heat removal rate. In case of sand molds, heat removal rates are increased by decrease in the mold thickness below a certain critical thickness. However, for the same thickness, solidification is faster in metallic molds. Next variable is stills, gating, and other casting design factors. Solidification takes place at a certain rate relative to the thickness of the casting. The casting should be designed to achieve controlled progressive directional solidification so that it becomes free from solidification related defects. Locations of gates and risers, uses of chills and other means for controlling the freezing process must be adopted suitably for the complete solidification to take place. And lastly, the pouring temperature. The pouring temperature of the molten metal must be higher than the solidification temperature of the metal. This will help the molten metal to flow into all regions of the mold before solidifying and overcomes the solidification related defects. However, the temperature of the melt must not be very high, as this might saturate the gases resulting from the formation of the oxide. Also, the molten metal at a high temperature has ability to penetrate into the surface of the mold material. Now let's see what is direction solidification. As the molten metal cools and solidifies in the mold, it shrinks or contracts in volume. Due to varying sections of the cast part and different rates of heat loss to the adjoining mold walls, some portion of the molten metal tends to solidify more quickly, resulting in voids and cavities than other portions. These voids must be filled with incoming liquid fluid from the feeder head, or what we call it as risers. Hence, the casting must be so designed with respect to the feeding system such that the part of the mold is the farthest from the feeder head must solidify first and then proceed through the casting towards the feeder head. The solidification which is made to occur in this particular direction is known as directional solidification. So it can be described as the solidification of the molten metal taking place in such a manner that liquid feed metal is always available for that portion of the metal that is just solidifying. It can also be described as the solidification of the molten metal taking place progressively from the thinnest part which solidifies first and towards the feeder head which solidifies last. Methods to control directional solidification. The various methods of directionally solidifying a molten metal and hence obtain sound casting are proper design and positioning of gates and risers, use of insulating pads and sleeves for risers, use of chills in a mold, incorporating blind risers, use of exothermic riser compounds. We'll discuss one by one regarding this, starting with the proper design and positioning of the gates and risers. The shape of the riser must be such that it must lose minimum heat, keeping the metal in the molten state. This can be met with a spherical shaped riser. However, its incorporation in the mold would be difficult. The next best shape is cylinder than a square. Cylindrical riser is commonly used and it must be at least 15 to 20% larger in diameter than the section it is required to feed. The riser height is usually 1.5 times greater than its diameter. To increase the volume to surface area ratio, the bottom of the cylinder riser can be shaped as hemisphere. The riser must position suitably so that the solidification is direction from the casting extremities towards the riser. Next, coming to the use of insulating pads and sleeves for risers. As you can see in the figure on the slide there, the sides of the riser are insulated with sleeves made up of suitable materials so as to achieve lower solidification rate in the riser. This enhances better feeding of the casting. Sleeves made from plaster of Paris are used for non-ferrous casting, while perlite sleeves or fireclay sawdust sleeves are used for ferrous casting. Next is the use of chills in a mold. This can again be seen in the figure on the slide there. Some chills are used as external and some are internal. A chill is nothing but a metallic object of suitable shape inserted in the sand mold to improve the solidification of the region. Especially such region of a casting which is inaccessible to a riser, thereby promoting directional solidification. A chill will produce local chilling and equalize the rate of solidification throughout the casting. It may be classified as internal chill or external chill depending upon its location in the mold. Chills placed inside the mold cavity are called internal chills, and when the cavity is filled with the molten metal, the chill will melt and become a part of casting. Thus, internal chills are made up of same material as that of the cast part. On the other hand, external chills are having high thermal conductivity that are placed on the edge of the mold cavity, thereby forming a part of the wall of the mold cavity. Next, use of blind risers. A conventional riser is open to atmosphere while a blind riser is completely enclosed in the sand mold. As a result, the molten metal in the blind riser cools slowly and stay liquid longer, thereby promoting directional solidification. And the last one is the use of exothermic riser compounds. Exothermic riser compounds are loose materials, essentially a mixture of metal oxide and aluminum sprinkled on the top of the riser in, in place of the insulating powder. Their function is to prevent the heat loss from the top of the riser and also to add some heat to the molten metal, thereby riser allowing the metal to stay hotter, which is necessary for the directional solidification. Degasification in liquid metals. As you already know that gases are much more soluble in liquid metal than in the solid metal. As a liquid metal is poured into the mold and solidifies, it absorbs gases from various sources. These gases dissolved in the molten metal gives rise to defects like blowholes, pinholes, etc. Since it is not possible to completely prevent the absorption of the gases in the melt, it is required to remove the dissolved gases in the process, and the process adopted is known as degasification. First, let us discuss about the sources of gases. Majorly, there are four sources of gases, that is the furnace atmosphere, the furnace charge, furnace to ladles and ladles to molds, and in the mold. Coming to the furnace atmosphere, the atmosphere inside the furnace may contain water vapor, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and sulfur dioxide as the products of combustion of fuel. In addition to the normal atmospheric gases such as nitrogen and oxygen. The amount of gas absorption depends on the conditions and the type of melting furnace. Maintaining clean and dry atmosphere inside the furnace and the furnace walls helps in reducing the gas absorption. Next is furnace charge. Wet or oily materials or contaminated scrap charged into the furnace contribute to the gas absorption. Use of dry and clean charge helps in reducing the gas absorption. Next, with respect to ladles and molds, incompletely dried linings on the surface of the spouts, tun dishes, and ladles, when brought in contact with the molten metal, may help in gas absorption through the dissociation of steam at the contact surface. Use of clean, dry, and preheated tools help in reducing the gas absorbed. And finally, in the molds, molten metal may absorb gases inside the mold in case if the mold materials contain excess moisture or volatile hydrocarbons. Molding materials free from volatile matter and proper venting system in the mold helps in reducing the gas absorption. In order to minimize the dissolved gases, some methods can be followed, such as keeping the metal free from moisture, dust, rust, grease, etc. Keep the furnace atmosphere clean, keeping the ladle free from moisture, keeping all the accessories used for the melt preparation free from rust and moisture, and protecting the molten metal using flux or slag. These methods can be used for minimizing the gas dissolution in the molten metal. Degasification methods. Although we try to minimize the gases getting dissolved in the molten metal, there are chances of gases getting entrapped inside the molten metal. So in order to reduce this, we need to go for degasification methods. There are some of the degasification methods are flushing, use of flux washing process, use of solid degassers, and vacuum degassing. First one is flushing. This method uses an inert gas to flush out the entrapped gases from the molten metal. Here, it's also called as the gas scavenging with inert gas. Inert gases such as chlorine, nitrogen, helium, argon are used in practice for degassing non-ferrous metals, while carbon monoxide is used for ferrous metals and nickel-based alloys. The first figure shows you the flushing process of degasification method. Here, the inert gas is simply piped from the storage tanks through the graphite tubes directly into the liquid metal. The piping of the inert gas creates bubbles which move upwards, and any dissolved gases in the liquid melt migrate readily to the bubble where it collects and is flushed from the melt to the atmosphere. The rate of degassing depends on the rate at which the gas diffuses into the gas bubbles. Next is the flux washing process or the usage of flux. In this method, the molten metal is subjected to slow agitation with fluxes and ensure proper contact between the flux and the molten metal. The flux will remove dissolved gases from the metal. Mainly, the fluxes contain the chlorides and fluorides of sodium, potassium, and calcium. The process can be made continuous as shown in the second figure. The next degasification method is use of solid degassers. Here, the use of solid degassers like C2Cl6, tablets of hexachloroethane, or calcium carbonate are used for degassing using solid degassers. They are plunged and held beneath the metal surface. These decompose and complete the hushing action. These solid agents results in generation of large number of gas bubbles throughout the molten metal, representing low pressure areas into which the dissolved gases diffuse and are flushed out of the molten metal. The next method is called as vacuum degassing. As the name itself suggests, vacuum degassing is a technique of removing dissolved gases from the liquid melt by lowering the pressure inside the vessel containing the liquid melt in the presence of vacuum. It is particularly used in steel foundries for degassing hydrogen and oxygen from the liquid steel. Steels refined in vacuum are characterized by homogeneous structure, low content of non-metallic inclusions, and low gas porosity. Vacuum degassing is typically performed in a specially designed chamber or vessel known as vacuum degasser. There are a number of variants followed in the vacuum degassing process. However, working on the same principle by exposing the molten metal to a low pressure environment, the reduced pressure inside the vessel or chamber causes the dissolved gas to become less soluble and separate from the liquid melt. When the vacuum degassing process is complete, the gas is removed from the vessel and the pressure is returned to normal. It must be noted that the effectiveness of any vacuum degassing operation depends on the surface area of the liquid melt that is exposed to low pressure. Hydrogen removal is a diffusion and partial pressure phenomenon, while oxygen removal is a function of chemical reaction of oxygen with carbon and partial pressure of carbon monoxide. The different variants of vacuum degassing with respect to hydrogen gas removal are static bath degassing, induction degassing, steam droplet degassing, and fractional degassing. Coming to static degassing, static bath technique is the simplest form of degassing technique, wherein the ladle tapped with the molten metal is placed within a chamber, sealed and evacuated as shown in figure A. The process, although time consuming and requiring additional equipment, may be simplified by sealing the tapped ladle itself with a cover shown. The space above the molten metal in the ladle forms the vacuum chamber. The reduced pressure
inside the chamber causes the dissolved gas to become less soluble and separate from the liquid melt. Once the degassing process is completed, the pouring of metal is carried out. This system gives an advantage of a small pump down volume, reducing the vacuum pump capacity requirement. However, since the system does not utilize any circulation of melt other than that provided by the natural convection, degassing proceeds at a slower rate. The next figure shows you the induction degassing. Induction degassing technique overcomes the disadvantage of static bar technique. The system is as shown in the figure 2. It consists of a crucible surrounded by the induction heating coil. The entire assembly located within a chamber that can be sealed and rapidly evacuated. Molten metal is transferred from the melting unit into the crucible, wherein the current flowing through the coils create a magnetic field that induces eddy current, and circular electric current produce a stirring action within the molten metal. The bath agitation which takes place at a normal frequency is just sufficient for the hydrogen gas removal from the melt. The effect of removing dissolved gases is enhanced to a greater extent in the presence of vacuum atmosphere. Here it is more efficient, except the cost of the furnace is a major drawback. Stream droplet degassing. In stream degassing technique, the molten metal from the ladle is poured down into another preheated ladle placed in an evacuated chamber as shown in the figure 3.5. Bottom pouring of the molten metal is more desirable as it creates a stream of flow into the vacuum chamber. The sudden exposure of liquid stream in the vacuum chamber leads to a very rapid degassing due to the increased surface area created by the breakup of stream into droplets. This process helps the hydrogen gas dissolved in the steel to be evacuated by the vacuum pump. The major amount of degassing occurs during the fall of the liquid stream, and as such the height of the pouring stream forms an important design parameter in the process. The next one is fractional degassing. In this technique, the molten metal to be tapped in the ladle is progressively degassed by treatment of fractions of metal in a separate pump metal vacuum vessel, as shown in the second figure. The system makes use of two tubes connected at the bottom of the vacuum chamber, with one tube which is connected to a pipe supplying argon gas through its refractory lining. Both the tubes are immersed into the ladle containing the molten metal. With such an arrangement, the liquid metal flows into the vacuum chamber under the influence of inert gas. Bubbles lead into the base of the tube. Fractional degassing level of the molten metal in the vacuum chamber is determined by the atmospheric pressure. Through the second tube in the vacuum chamber, the molten metal flows down back to the ladle, producing continuous circulation of the melt and resulting in the removal of gases. Thank you everyone. If you have any doubts or queries, you can shoot a mail to hsrvcet@gmail.com.